I saw Mayor Chop's hand up. Go ahead.
I think what Councillor Martin is trying to get at is whether or not, and the answer may very well be no. You could come back at the first meeting and say no. Have there been any attempts to look at those areas where we might be able to find efficiencies and cost savings? Since these fees are meant to be on a cost recovery basis only, the fact that they're all going up at 2.1% is difficult to understand when there may be areas where costs should have in fact gone down because of particular efficiencies. So the answer may very well be no. I think the question is just simply, was there any investigation? And pardon me if I'm putting words into your mouth. Was there any investigation by staff into these areas? And I think some of those areas in particular that might warrant attention may be areas where the county has been competing with the private sector and likely subsidizing some of those fees to offer a service to residents that could very well be offered elsewhere, and we would not in turn be subsidizing those costs. Does that make sense?
Mr. Johnson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Chop, yes, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to reiterate, we have over 600 fees, and every single one of them have been looked at some point to ensure that we have full cost recovery, or we subsidize them. So really there's 3 levels of fees, if you want to get into the details. There's fees that we just simply don't charge, and we let the tax levy take care of it. Then there's fees that we make sure we charge 100% recovery. However, that doesn't always work. And then there's fees that we have as subsidization. Perfect example is, it was a hot topic a couple of years ago, was the holding tank rates. We subsidized those by 67%. The motion that Councillor Martin has put forward, we really need to, we have no problem with bringing a set amount of fees back to you and showing you how we came up with them, but we can't come back with all 600. Planning fees seems to, we've had a few questions about the planning fees, and that did go through a very rigorous process 4 or 5 years ago. We'd be more than happy to bring those back and to show you how we came up with those fees. If there's any other specific areas that you would like us to come back with, if we had that direction, that would really help us out a lot and to narrow down what you need.
Go ahead, Mayor Chop.
I think with the planning fees in particular, again, just what I highlighted earlier, you know, we had 142 million in development charges, and that decreased to 100 million. I don't think there has been any staff reductions in that department. So to justify putting up fees by 20% plus inflation, that's where that's where we need to see some analysis as this new council. I get you can't go through and show us all 600, but it would be interesting to separate them out perhaps into baskets. Perhaps Mr. Cridlin would be able to separate out those areas where he feels, you know, perhaps we're competing in an area maybe we shouldn't be operating in, and then we could move from there. The increase, the amount that, again, I just reiterate this, the amount that we're looking to raise off the increase in these user fees is actually quite nominal in the grand scheme of things. And so, again, while it may not seem much to us at 2.1%, it very well could be quite a bit of money to somebody else. And so perhaps maybe even one of the other options, you come back with a report at the beginning of January and break out those areas for us, provide the analysis on the planning department, and it may very well be worth deferring something for those areas where it's a 2.1 on hockey rink time and so on, putting those in a basket, and maybe we defer those until after the budget to determine whether or not there is in fact a necessity to raise those areas, given the nominal amount of the additional revenue from those fees, if that makes sense.
Comment? Do you have any comment with respect to this suggestion?
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, I have no problem with bringing anything back. It's just we need a narrow, not a narrow focus, but we just need some specific direction on certain fees.
Okay, can we be more
and-
specific? I guess to be fair to
Yeah,
staff, we have to narrow it in an area somewhere. You know, do you want fees that are over 5% to be looked at, or 5% increase? Is that fair, you know?
Would it be fair to propose a motion then that we reject the user fees as proposed and provide this council with time to review the fees and suggest areas where they would like to see greater investigation into them by the next council meeting?
You're saying the council would be the ones.
Well, if we have councilors that are concerned about user fees in terms of the clubs, et cetera. Being delivered this package on Friday with 600 and some user fees to go through, much like staff can't go through them, it's pretty difficult to go through line by line. But there maybe there's particular areas where they would like to focus on, and we could provide those areas to you at the next council meeting. I'm just throwing out an idea. It's not set in stone by any means.
Do you have any suggestions, Mr. Johnson, as to where we should go with this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Chop and Council. So I just want to make sure everybody understands when we defer the fees, then they won't be starting January 1st, and we'll lose that, whatever revenue that is. It's $160,000 for the year. Divide that by 12. I don't have my calculator. I'm sure you can figure it out. So if we're okay with that, I would suggest that perhaps at the next council meeting or the first meeting in January, council gives staff direction on which fees to provide more information about, and then we would come back with a subsequent report with the same attachments with that information.
Okay. Do you have any comment, CEO, Mr. CEO?
May I suggest, part of the jam from our side is while you're reasonably asking for more information, you're actually asking for a very large volume of work, which is, as we point out, there's 600 fees. You know, I'm seriously suggesting we come up with 600 justifications. That would be, there's no way we can do that by January. We lose 2 weeks for the winter closure. But we've heard planning quite clearly. We've heard some requests around Mr. Critlin's area. May I suggest that we look at those two discrete items, and we can tell which areas we get the largest fees from, and the items that make up the top 10% of our fee generating revenue. Now, that might be 60 items if everything was the same size. I know they aren't. So that could be 30 items, but that gives us some reasonable amount of work product to come back, and hopefully that divvies out around the corporation. So that's a manageable number of tasks to come back with better analysis on a survey, because 600 is a lot. We are a $227 million corporation, and we do have some need to put this matter before you so you can make a decision in reasonably timely fashion. We understand there's going to be some delay now, and while we accept that, we do need to approve this sooner rather than later, and that might be a middle saw-off, so you can have some analysis on the things that people use the most and we collect the most money on, rather than a really esoteric fee that might only happen once a year or not even once a year. We looked at the top 10% plus the two subject areas. We could probably find something that hopefully would work for everyone.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Rabbit and then Ms. Shelley.
The only thing that I would suggest be added to that has been mentioned, that by not raising a fee, we would then impact our tax levy. I would like to know what that impact would be if we are not adopting that increase to those fees. Having that dollar value would allow me to go back to our constituents and at least say, look, we've had a tax levy impact. We didn't have our user fee raised in this area, and that was the trade-off that we made as a council, as a community, and at least we did it in an informed way, and we knew what we were doing in either, again, impacting that levy or raising a user fee.
I believe 1% is $840,000. And so if you work it back, you can, $160,000 would tell you what the percentage would be basically on the tax levy. Councilor Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this question is maybe for Ms. LaPlante or Mr. Johnson. All of these fee increases are cost recovery fees, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Morrissey, yes, that's correct. Michelle.
So, and I'm not sure if there's a particular staff member I need to direct this to. Do we ever review whether or not the actual cost for some of these facilities or services needs to be looked at, and perhaps the cost of it could be reviewed, and maybe the cost is higher than it should be because we haven't pursued efficiencies in the first place? That's my question.
James?
Through the chair. That's a very good question. Of the many line items of fees, we do attempt to work with the divisions and the departments to do a thorough analysis on the fees on a regular basis. We can't do all 600 in 1 year, so we split it up. We did planning a few years ago, we did GIS this year, and we did water and wastewater this year, which took quite a bit of time. And there is some savings you'll see on the 8th. You'll see some savings in the water and wastewater rates and some of them. We did a very good analysis on that. So yes, we do thorough analysis. It's just that we don't have the staff resources to do all of them in 1 year, every year. So we split it up, and we try to do it every 3 to 5 years is the goal, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yes, Mayor. Chop.
Would I be able to propose a new motion at this time?
Well, the mayor wrote something down, but
Okay.
have you got something different now?
I was just going to say, I think at this point, and I would like to make a motion that we reject the fee schedule as presented and direct staff to come back at the first meeting in February after the budget deliberations and provide a justification for those fees as described by Mr. Cribbs, with a particular emphasis on the planning department charges at that time. So we would suspend further discussions of the user fees until the first meeting in February, given the nominal amount. If we're talking 160,000 divided by 12 months, that's 2 months, so we're, in the vicinity of $25,000. The impact of that is nominal. Maybe we might even be able to save some money on the integrity commissioner and take care of it.
Any comments on that suggestion?
Through the chair, no comments.
Okay, go ahead, Ed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I have the same thing. The problem that I have is the wording reject, because if we do reject and it gets approved by council, then none of these fees can be approved. You're triggering reconsideration, so I avoid the use of negative words in motions. I do have something that achieves the same thing, that staff report FS 1837 be referred back to staff for additional information analysis on planning and community services fees, and that a further report be brought forward to council in the first meeting of February in 2019.
Okay. Okay, discussion on that motion, recommendation, I should say. Don't see any discussion. We have a mover, Mayor Chop, and Councillor Rabbits is seconding that. So call the vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? None opposed. Okay. Thank you. That is carried. Now, we're moving on to the official plan review approval information report on page 139. And we have Alicia Cull here. Welcome. And Matt Rainier, the man who penned most of this report. Thank you for being here, and we'll let you do your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Chop and Council. The purpose of this report is just to update you and provide you with an overview of the changes that were made to the official plan through the 5-year review process. The province legislates that official plans must be reviewed every 5 years, and planning staff began the Norfolk County official plan review in the fall of 2014. This was a lengthy process, and involved 2 different staff leads as well as a consultant. So I just want to note that Mary Elder is here. You probably all know her. She retired. She was a principal planner, though, and she did lead the second half of the project. Tricia Givens led the first part before she moved over to housing, and Matt Renier was the consultant that helped us finish it off. This amendment was adopted by Council in January of 2018 and was forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for final approval. The notice of decision was issued on October 4th, and the changes came into force in effect on October 5th. The right to appeal decisions of official plan reviews was removed through Bill 139, the Building Better Communities and Conserving Watersheds Act 2017. As such, no appeal opportunities were available after the approval of the official plan review, so the decision by the province was final. The main changes are summarized as following. So official plan or on-farm diversified use policies have been included, which open up a wide range of new uses on farms and a simplified process to establish them. Previously, a surplus farm dwelling could not be severed unless it was constructed earlier than August 24th, 1978, and this has been changed to a rolling date of 10 years prior to the date of the severance application. Garden suites can now be approved for an initial period of 11 years instead of 5 years, and the previous industrial and business park designation has been split into 2 new designations, the industrial designation and the protected industrial designation. This allows for more flexibility on the industrial lands while keeping the protected industrial lands available for employment uses. Lastly, a new mixed use or mixed residential and commercial designation has been established to recognize the transition area between downtown cores and surrounding residential neighborhoods. The official plan review has resulted in an improved document which will allow for further responsible growth in Norfolk County while keeping in mind the need for flexibility. And I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have about the updated official plan.
Thank you for your presentation. This official plan now, we really can't appeal it or anything. It's our Bible for the next 5 years or so.
That's correct.
Okay. Open for questions. Official plan. Mayor Chop, I see your hand up.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I mean, obviously, you know that the official plan was a big part of some of what I campaigned on, and I'm just wondering if you have ever read any case law that might speak to the fact that official plans are, in fact, being used contrary to the intention of the Ontario legislature to regulate land use.
Through the chair, I have not read that.
Okay. To my knowledge, the provincial policy was changed in 2018. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, it was changed. The provincial policy statement was 2014.
24, and so there's a new provincial policy statement coming out. Sorry, is it this year? Is it every 5 years for the provincial policy statement?
Through the chair, that was changed, so it'll be reviewed every 10 years, so it won't be till 2024 at least.
Okay, very good. No more questions.
Other
Thanks.
questions? This is an important document. Councilor Geisel.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bottom of this, talking about the rolling 10-year prior to the date of application. I'm not quite understanding that. I guess can you tell me what's going to happen? I realize it's not going to go back to 1978. It's not going to go to 60,000 on a rolling date. So some of the cases
Through the chair, yes, as long as it was built December 11th, 2008, back behind then yes, it could be severed.
Okay. Other municipalities have had that for quite some time. Mayor Chop again.
Could you speak to some of the key changes that you've seen, particularly in terms of farm structures in the new official plan?
Through Mr. Chair, Mayor Chop, one of the big changes spent a lot of time on was agricultural uses and diversified, what we call non-farm diversified uses, which provides the opportunities for farmers to have a side business
on their property. And in most cases, it probably has removed the need for a zoning bylaw amendment to have that put in. There are some regulations and not regulations, but policies in the official plan dealing with the kind of conditions and the size of the non-farm diversified use. The primary use on agricultural land is still agriculture, but to provide further opportunities for farmers to make additional income and support their farm operation, we've really opened the door probably as far as we can, I think, in terms of provincial policy. The official plan, the amendments that we made were subject to review by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and that review has actually went to all the other ministries that have any concern with the official plan. And you see in the report that not all of the things that were approved by council were actually approved by the ministry, and some of what we wanted to get in was not approved. Maybe down the road we can have another kick at those, or provide maybe further justification. But right now it's a done deal. I hope that answers your question. One thing we also did in terms of economic vitality. Agriculture is a big part of the economy in Norfolk. There is no policy in the plan on agriculture in terms of the economic vitality of the county. And we added quite a bit of policy in the plan on things that council may do in terms of supporting agriculture and the agricultural economy, because it's so important to the economy. We also did looked at other aspects of the economy as well, such as tourism, downtown developments, and that kind of thing. So economic development and was an important component of what we did in the review.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Rabbits?
I had a question in our agenda, page 177, 178. It's regarding agricultural lot creation and lot adjustment policies, and I apologize if you've already answered this question. I do see that it was entirely stricken out by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and I was wondering what rationale was provided to us in that regard, or why that particular, of all the ones that were amended, this seems to be one that was just totally stricken, and I was hoping for an explanation as to why.
Through the chair, so that's what we call the lot swap policy. Basically what it refers to is when a farmer owns a vacant lot on their farm that's been severed off, so usually around an acre. Sometimes they want to merge it back in the farm and then sever it off somewhere else, kind of relocate it. The province does not support that because it's their interpretation that the policies in the provincial policy statement do not allow for new lot creation even when you're merging another farm or another lot in with the farm. So that's why those were removed. So we came up with a large list of criteria to try and facilitate that, but the province didn't go for it.
Councilor Rabbits, you must have got the same call I did about that. Okay, anything else? Councilor Martin?
I'm not sure if this is something that I should direct to you or over to the planning department, but if a home has been severed or would like to be severed off of a farm property, is it true? And if so, can you just provide additional insight / educate me on why that home needs to be habitable for the next purchaser?
Through the chair, so the purpose of that, first of all, that comes from the provincial policy statement, so even if we wanted to change it, we can't. But the purpose is because the intent of the policy is to allow farmers to sever off houses so that they don't end up becoming landlords. So there's lots of farmers in Norfolk County who own many rental properties because they've bought farms and there's a house on them. If it's not habitable, then it doesn't really meet the intent of the policy. It basically just allows for a new lot severance because the farmer isn't under the stress of having to be a landlord or anything like that. You could just demo it, which is usually what would happen. They would sever it, demolish it, and build a new house. So it just doesn't really meet the intent of the policy. It's not really surplus to the farm if it's not being used for anything, if that makes sense.
So an individual could just demo and then build, technically.
Through the chair, that's correct. They just wouldn't be able to sever that house until it's at least 10 years old.
Thank you.
Anything further? Yes, I'll ask a question with respect to the lot swap, and as Councilor Rabbits mentioned, it's all crossed out. We've been trying through this. The Agriculture Advisory Board is quite adamant. They'd like to see that lot swap because you're trading a poor piece of land for a better piece of land. And did the Ministry of Municipal Affairs give any rationale why? Can we get some rationale from them why they don't think that's a good idea? Like, if you're going to build a house on a poor piece of land in favor of keeping something in agriculture, it just doesn't make sense. So what kind of rationale can we get from them on that?
So after I did go to the Agricultural Advisory Board to tell them about this update, and they also asked for they wanted justification as to why the province said no. And it didn't really come from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It was from OMAFRA. And I don't know that they're really against it. It's just that it seems to be everyone's interpretation that you just cannot sever a new lot no matter what. I have a feeling they might consider it in the 2024 update to the provincial policy statement, but that's the rationale that we've got from them, is just that regardless of whether it's improving the situation, it's still severing a new lot, so they don't support it.
Okay, I guess we'll have to try again. Thanks very much. Anything further? Mayor Chop?
Mr. Loeb, he's left? Is that? Okay.
What should I say? Oh. Mr. Loeb, we are on the official plan report, and the mayor has a question to pose to you.
Thanks for coming back. My apologies. My question to you, would you agree that, and again, this is something that was big throughout the campaign period, that one of the challenges with municipalities adopting provincial legislation is the fact that the only person really left to challenge that implementation is the citizen themselves, and perhaps all citizens don't have the resources, the time, the money, the wherewithal to be able to challenge a requirement when it's imposed on him or her by a municipality.
I would tend to agree that there are challenges posed to people who don't have the resources available to hire consultants and other professional advisors who may be able to give them the sort of straight path to what they need to get to. Yes, certainly, that's true largely across the justice system, but also in this instance, yes.
So you would agree as well, although you may not have researched them, I understand, that a number of cases would have been challenged in court related to official plans and their legality.
As you mentioned, I couldn't speak to it without knowing firsthand knowledge.
Okay.
Sorry.
From the research that I have done, and again, this does not apply to Norfolk County, nor am I attempting to discount any of the work that you guys have done on this. I think that I think that's probably been a huge piece of the planning department's job over the past, I don't even know how many years they've been working on it, but I can appreciate the depth of the report that had to be done. The challenge is often, however, provincial legislation is not necessarily, despite the fact that it is approved by the province, there are court cases that are still won against municipalities for inclusion of items into their official plans that the government or that the courts deem that are outside the jurisdiction of the municipality. one more question is just to Ms. Dusling, actually. Would you be, again, I don't know if you remember the statistics off the top of your mind in terms of the number of official plan amendments that Norfolk County had, and I believe you had a comparator beside it, Haldeman or something. I'm sure you recall that there was quite a significant discrepancy between Norfolk County and the comparing municipalities.
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, I don't have those numbers with me tonight, but I can get them to council again for your information.
Just that you recall that there was a fair discrepancy between our numbers and other regions, because I pointed it out that day.
Again, I'll get
Okay.
the numbers for you. I don't want to speak out of turn.
All right, thanks. That's all.
Anything
Thank you.
further to the presenters? Okay. Need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation here. Councillor Michelli and moves, and Councillor Taylor seconds. To which? The recommendation? Okay. Go ahead. Your microphone hasn't been on for a while.
Sorry. So the recommendation that we adopt the official
I would
plan.
think it's Councillor Michelli has made the motion and Councillor Taylor seconds it, but,
So I can make an amendment?
well, I'm thinking that that's a second motion. Maybe you can put that as a second
Okay.
motion, okay, rather than include it in that one,
No problem.
okay? So let's vote on Councillor Michelli's motion first. Okay. And that reads that report DCS 18105, the official plan review approval information report be received as information. Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, proceed with your second motion.
My second motion would be to direct council to provide advice on options, if at all,
Direct council or direct staff?
Or our council, our legal counsel, my apologies.
Oh, our county solicitor, okay. Okay.
I'll rephrase that, and direct staff to provide advice on the options that council has to challenge in whole or in part the current official plan as drafted and negotiated by past council.
Okay. County solicitor, do you understand that?
I do understand that, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that request? Did you wish to speak to it more? Okay, go ahead, speak to it further.
Not looking for necessarily even that we have options, just to see what is out there and available. I certainly can provide references to case law that show that municipalities across the country are often in implementing official plans contrary to the intention of the Ontario legislature. So again, I just want to say I'm not, it's not a critique of any of the staff that worked on the official plan. It's more to see what our options are as we look to really open Norfolk again for business, to facilitate and make that easier for people moving forward to adapt sort of to the changing times that we're seeing. So again, it's not in a critique of the plan that we have before us, just that we could see whatever our options might be.
Do you have a timeline for us?
Let's say I'm assuming that things are busy over the next while, perhaps by March 1st? By March 1st?
March 1st would be fine, thank you.
Okay. Does everybody understand the motion, the recommendation? Do I need a seconder here? Pardon me?
Can you repeat the motion, please?
It's a recommendation. Okay, go ahead.
A recommendation that staff provide advice on the options that council has to challenge in whole or in part the current official plan as drafted and negotiated by past council by March 1st.
Okay. Seconder? Councilor Martin, seconder. Okay. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay. Thank you to Alicia and Matt.
Thank you.
And I see Mary Elder here. Thank you for all your hard work on this official plan. I know you've been at it for several years. And good to see you again. And there has been some positive things happen with that official plan. I know the Agricultural Advisory Board is pretty pleased with that 10-year rotating surplus farm dwelling and the diversification of uses on the farm. They're very pleased that that's gone through. They're not so happy about the fact that the lot swap did not go through. Okay, we are moving to our last report, and it's General Insurance and Risk Management Services, and this is Yakov's area.
So before we launch into the specifics of the report in front of you, ECS 1836, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce the people sitting to my left. So to my very left is Ms. Shelley Darlington, and she's the Director of Corporate Support Services. And to her left is Tracy Borland, and she's the Supervisor of Risk and Realty Services. I just thought, since a majority of council may not have met these two individuals, that I introduce them at this point in time as we sort of continue the discourse. And at this point, I'll throw it to Ms. Darlington to introduce the report.
Thank you. Through the chair, the purpose of this report is to seek council's approval to award the RFP for general insurance and risk management services to the lowest price proponent, Frank Cowan Company Limited. The RFP was publicly advertised and issued in accordance with Norfolk County's purchasing policies and procedures on September 10th. It was posted on the Norfolk County website, through Ontario Public Buyers Association, and advertisements were placed through the Norfolk County Coordinated Ad. 5 bids were distributed and 4 submissions were received and publicly acknowledged on closing on October 30th. 2 bid submissions were rejected upon second review as they failed to comply with the requirements outlined in the bid document. The remaining 2 proposals were evaluated in accordance to the evaluation criteria stipulated in the RFP. 1 bidder moved forward, meeting the benchmark score of 70% or higher in the technical proposal, and proceeded to the opening of their price proposal. The lowest price per point proposal was submitted by Frank Cowan Company Limited, with a cost for the 2019 total premium of $1,359,231 plus applicable taxes. You will note in the report that staff have recommended, of the optional items proposed by Frank Cowan, that we're recommending an increase to the excess liability limit from $5 million to $10 million. This would be at a cost of an additional annual premium of $24,084. Including the optional excess liability increase would result in a cost for the 2019 premium of $1,383,315 plus applicable taxes. The important piece to note for council is this represents a decrease of $77,358 or 5.59% from the 2018 total actual renewal premium. This is quite a good news story from a competitive bidding process. Schedule A, as part of your report, provides a summary of the insurance policies that form the complete insurance portfolio for Norfolk County. It does renew on an annual basis on January 1st, and Schedule B of the report has provided you a detailed analysis of the premiums by policy comparing to 2018. And with that, we would be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Questions to this good news report? Councilor Van Passen, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to staff, it's for 2 years. Is the second year the same price? Is that what?
Through the chair, that's an excellent question, Councillor. There is some rate stability. We will receive our annual renewal in the fall of next year. However, part of their stability is was detailed in the report, and I'm just looking for Tracy to she can stipulate what that stability is. I believe it's 3% increase is the maximum increase, but it will be based on claims experienced by the county. And as you can appreciate, as we add more services or operations with the county, or more property, or more equipment, or more vehicles, our insurance fluctuates depending on what we're insuring.
Okay, thank you very much.
Further questions? Mayor Chop.
Apologies, I know you guys are going to throw me out of here. First question, I'm just curious, why did Cowan recommend an increase in the liability? And I guess to follow along with that, did we have an increase in claims? What are our claims looking like, et cetera?
Through the chairman to Mayor Chop, I'm going to answer a two-part if I can. The first question that you raise is about the increase in the excess liability. And essentially that was proposed by Cowan and we reviewed as a staff team on that opportunity. Basically, when we look at the marketplace, we have a number of different factors contributing to joint and several liability and trends in court settlements. That certainly has had staff indicate that it would be prudent to increase that liability excess policy. We're seeing court awards in great excess of $20 million, and we want to protect the corporation in the event of those. With respect to claims, we do have an annual report that we bring forward to council, and that's typically in closed session, and we will provide some detailed analysis about our claims experience in the past year. We are seeing an increase in claim numbers in 2018, and it's heavily in the liability area of claims where we're seeing an increase in those. And I would ask Tracy to speak to any further information if you need it.
Could you, just in terms, I mean, again, it's a new council. This is our first time dealing with this. Could you just explain to us, I know we have different types of insurance, and specifically what this insurance policy covers?
Certainly, through the chair, we will go through Schedule A of your report, and we have a number of insurance policies that create the portfolio for Norfolk County. And it certainly is comprised of general liability, errors and omission liability, owned automobile, non-owned automobile. We can describe each of those if council would like. The excess policy that relates to those policies that I've just noted. We have environmental liability policy, comprehensive crime. We have counselors and board member accident policy. We have a volunteer accident policy. We have a conflict of interest policy. We have a legal expenses reimbursement policy. Okay. We have property policy. It's quite comprehensive. I think that the detail on Schedule A kind of provides a synopsis. Certainly, we completed a comprehensive insurance program review for the last council last year, and if that's something that this council would like, we could certainly bring back a report and go through the detail of the insurance program for council if you'd like.
That would be fantastic. One question is also, do you have a comparison, a benchmark of other neighboring municipalities? I've made some phone calls recently, and although I greatly appreciate the savings that we're about to realize under the contract, I'm concerned that we are still perhaps not in line with where we should be. And just as a follow-up on that, would it be, so we'll come back to that question, would it be fair to say that projects that are undertaken in Norfolk County by outside engineering firms, if there is an error with a bridge that is constructed or so on and so forth, does this policy cover that type of issue?
Through the chair to the mayor, what we would do with any contractors, whether they're engineering firms or architect firms, we certainly collect their insurance certificates, and we're added as an additional insured to their policy in the event that they're negligent or their actions cause damage to our property. We're able to utilize their certificate of insurance and their liability for their negligent acts.
But we would still also carry our own insurance to a certain degree over those project.
Yes, we do carry our insurance portfolio, yes.
Okay, so did we benchmark other neighboring municipalities?
Through the chair, just pulling up our previous report, and I'll let Tracy speak to sort of that insurance program review. The one item I would caution council is each municipality has a different insurance program. Different deductible levels, different levels of insurance. So it's difficult to compare an apples to apples situation because some of our neighboring municipalities have much higher deductible levels than we do in Norfolk County. And then I'm just going to get Tracy to respond to sort of what the benchmark is in the insurance marketplace. And this is, again, information coming from 2017 when we completed that detailed review.
Through the chair to the mayor, in our analysis last year, we found that there were approximately 5 primary markets that would carry municipal liability insurance and have the capacity to carry the asset levels as well as the liability capacity that's required of a municipality.
Okay. You spoke to the deductible. Did our deductible increase from last year to this year?
Through the chair, there's been no deductible change, so no change in our program. Certainly, if council so chooses, we can have that discussion at a more detailed session. We do have those discussions in closed session because we don't want to harm our defense.
Okay. Part of my concern in the insurance world is that a lot has changed and there are different ways to insure. And while this is a great story in the sense that we're saving $77,000, I believe, or somewhere in that vicinity, I feel that there's other ways to insure in current, that we should be investigating different options. And I think it's unfortunate in this RFP that we actually only had 2 bids that went through. I don't find that to be a competitive process. I'm just wondering if it would surprise you to learn, and this is why I asked whether or not this insurance covers this type of issue, but I was recently on the Consulting Engineers of Ontario website, and in fact, there is an advisory not to submit a bid to Norfolk County, and it's my understanding that this is not the first advisory that's been put out against Norfolk County. Because our indemnity clauses in our contracts are so excessive that they have been deemed uninsurable. And so that is one example. There is another example where, and I've seen letters from insurance companies where people with their homeowners policy, and again, I don't know if it fits under this particular insurance policy, under their homeowner's policy or their tenant's policy, that they're in fact covered for liability when they're at Norfolk County facilities, and yet we are simultaneously charging them as well. So I just wonder if perhaps it seems to me from the Consulting Engineers of Ontario website and other ways that maybe we are almost double insuring in some areas. And that if we looked at a benchmark of neighboring municipalities, we might find that we might be able to realize even greater savings than $77,000.
Thank you. Through the chair, you have lots of good questions there. I'll try to hopefully capture all of them that you've presented. I'm going to direct the indemnification and the Engineers Association to Mr. Loeb. We've been dealing with that for some time now. But I think you mentioned about the homeowner's insurance, and that's the user facility insurance program that the county does provide to individuals. It is not a mandatory program. So individuals who rent facilities have the opportunity to purchase a liability policy from Norfolk County through, actually not through Norfolk County, we're an agent through the Frank Cowan Company. It is not mandatory if they have another insurance that they can submit to us. So if they have a home ownership insurance, they don't have to pay the facility user fee. So it is 2 separate items, and it's quite reasonable when we look at the schedule that's provided. Just as an example, for a non-sporting event or an occasion, an hourly an event is $5 in insurance premium that you can opt in for this. And again, if you own your own business or you have your home ownership and you can provide that insurance certificate, you don't have to opt into this. But certainly I'll direct the indemnification question to Mr. Loeb.
So I just wanted to speak to the overall concept of it, and I can provide legal advice in closed session about the exact nature of the indemnification clauses, the difference between what the Engineering Association would like to see versus ours. But overall, what we're talking about is their third-party insurance being applicable under our contract, essentially. And so that doesn't relate to, what I'm trying to tie back to is the report that's before you. That doesn't relate to our overall insurance portfolio. That relates to their insurance and whether they're willing to enter into a contract with us that would have an indemnification to us. And again, I can speak to the differences of opinion about the wording of those clauses in closed session, but I would also just point out that in instances where purchasing is curious about why people did or did not bid, they do debriefs, and that is, I would like to say never, but it may just be rarely ever brought up, or, yeah, no, the indemnification.
Right, that's correct.
Never. Yeah. Right, so we do debriefs on why people may not have bid, and in the specific instance, I know the notice you're referring to from January of this past year, even the entity that originally raised that issue ultimately did not identify that as an issue that would have perhaps prevented them from bidding, and through the debriefs, that's never identified by actual people that are looking at bidding to date. So notwithstanding that the association has a view on it, and I can speak to that in closed session, that in all of Norfolk County's debriefs, that has never been identified by a potential bidder as a reason that they would not bid.
Through the chair, if I just may add one last comment, I don't think I answered the question for Mayor Chop with respect to sort of that marketplace analysis and further cost savings. That's certainly, if we want to look at deductible levels going forward, that's probably an area where the corporation can save additional money if you choose to have higher deductible limits.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. Anything further? Okay. So, I, having sat on as a director on 2 insurance companies previously, and soon a third one coming up, I can tell you that when you get a decrease in your insurance and everything else is the same, that's good today. With all the fires and tragedies we're having in the world, earthquakes and forest fires in California, it all is going to reflect on our insurance down the road, and they're predicting a hefty increase in everybody's insurance. So to me, this is a good news story. Who wants to make the motion for the recommendation?
I'd like it.
Councillor Ravitz, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. I will read it. That's staff report ECS 18-36, the award of request for proposal, RFP ECS CSS 18-02, general insurance and risk management services be received as information, and that the Director, Corporate Support Services, be authorized to execute a contract with the Frank Cowan Company for a period of 2 years with an option in favor of Norfolk County to extend the agreement for 3 additional terms of up to 1 year each.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a division of question if possible.
Okay, I will just read the rest of it and then we'll look at that. And further, that council approve the 2019 insurance premium of $1,383,315 plus applicable taxes, which includes an increase to the excess liability limit representing a decrease of $77,358, which is 5.59% from the 2018 renewal premium. Okay, I think Councillor Van Passen made that, and who's the seconder? Ian Ravitz, okay. Yes, what was your concern there, Madam Mayor?
I'd like a division of question and then to amend the motion.
And where would you like that?
The division of question, that the first part be received as information, and the second part, and that the amendment that the Director of Corporate Support Services be authorized to execute a contract with Frank Cowan Company for a period of 1 year with an option in favor of Norfolk County to extend the agreement for 3 additional terms of up to 1 year each.
So I guess the question I have is, was it advertised that way as 1 year or 2 years, or can you comment on that, sir?
The RFP bid terms were the 2-year term with 3 additional 1-year options. So that is not something that we are able to amend right now. And I can provide legal advice behind the door as to why that is. But I would just sort of flatly state it, no, that ought not to be amended.
I'm not a lawyer, but I agree with you. Did you have something to say on that? I thought it's like, okay. So you've got your answer there, and I think he's right.
Well, we haven't signed the contract, so respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I disagree. I don't want to see us without insurance, obviously, as of December 31st. I don't think it would be unheard of to go back and request that they amend it to 1 year, so that we could look at, even with Cowan, perhaps a different way of structuring it that might actually include a self-insurance component and so on. I just believe that the insurance arrangements are not the same today as they used to be, and in all areas of our insurance policy, we should be looking at some more modern solutions to accommodate.
Well, I'm pretty sure we have to go in closed session to discuss this matter further. Who's got the advice on that? Okay. So I need a motion to go into closed session to proceed to receive legal advice. Councillor Van Passen? And Councillor Van Passen, you move that? And Councillor Michelli?
No, I just would like to respectfully disagree with the mayor on this occasion that I don't see any issue, and like you could correct me if I'm wrong, that we can't enter into the agreement as we requested in the RFP, and we can still go back and renegotiate the contract with Cowan Insurance, because like I bet there's a lot more history that our insurance policy has been about this same level for the last 18 years, right? It hasn't changed a whole lot other than go up when anything goes wrong in the rest of the world. And I look through it, I don't think it is that bad a price. I think there's ways to adjust it, but I think we can negotiate that with Cowan's when we are their client under that contract and adjust it internally from that point. And I don't really see the need in trying to change, like, this is what we asked for, this is what we got, this is what everybody bid on, and to back out of that deal now, I don't think that's fair to us. I don't think it's fair to the insurance companies. So we can still follow through and negotiate something with them or talk to them about changes, but let's have the contract signed and have the insurance in place while we do that.
My concern would be whether or not there is a clause to be able to do that within the agreement, whether Cowan would be amenable in a year's time. If there isn't a clause within the agreement, since we haven't seen it, that said, I'll if you'd like to put the motion to vote on it now, that's
well,
that's
I'd like to, as been suggested, I'd like to go into closed session to discuss this matter further. Okay? Yes, Councillor Rabbits.
I just wanted to make a point of order. So we have had a division of the question, and I believe I'm looking at 3 different clauses here. The information piece, the terms, and then, and further that council approve. Can we at least get the information received and then go into closed session regarding those last 2 clauses?
What's your wish, Shelley? Okay, we're certain we can do that. So that was put forth by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Ian Rabbits. That staff report ECS 1836 awarded request for proposal RFP ECS CSS 1802 General Insurance and Risk Management Services be received as information. That's the way you want it worded to vote on. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now, the mover and a seconder to go in camera. The mayor and Councilor Michele. That pursuant to Section 239.2 and 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 C 25, Council in Committee, Board,